This is Unit 3, Mod 10. We're going to be talking about secondary traumatization today. Maybe a new term to many of us. So secondary traumatic stress will be our focus for this next few minutes and our journal entry for today. So we have to ask the question, what is secondary traumatic stress? Well, Figley in 1998 has a pretty good conceptualization here. The experience of tension and distress directly related to the demands of living with and caring for someone who displays the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So secondary traumatic stress arises from caregiving of primary victims. Because of the emotional connection, being in close, prolonged contact with the victim, with that person who has experienced that trauma firsthand, just being with them becomes a constant stressor for that caregiver and can be traumatizing in and of itself. Family members and professionals, and this is important for us, I believe, often experience symptoms of traumatization. I think now we would expand that conceptualization that Figley put out in 1998 to really include the professional as well, because as we are working with families, as we are dealing with other people's trauma, that can be very traumatic to us itself. So being aware of that and learning to deal with that is very important. The impact of trauma is not only felt by victims, but it does take a toll on supporters as well. We know that. The trauma is not just experienced by the primary victim. That those who are close to that person, those who are close to that family, are also feeling the effects of that trauma as well. And we do call those secondary victims. What's really fascinating is over the last several decades have been a growing line of research on secondary victims, looking at secondary victimization or secondary trauma in a variety of different areas, including sexual assault, being a partner of someone who was sexually assaulted, and how traumatic that might be. We're actually going to look at a case study of that from a popular television show for your journal response today, and just thinking about how we might respond to secondary victims. Clinicians and other professionals, there's a lot out there now about how professionals need to take care of themselves and how we are often traumatized by dealing with trauma so often. Family caregivers, obviously, especially thinking about people in my situation, thinking about raising a child with disability, or people who are giving care to people in late life who have some kind of physical illness, or maybe dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that as well. And then those people that are actually attending to the family caregivers as well. There's even a line of research that has begun on trauma in the undergraduate classroom. I find this fascinating, and actually, as part of this mod, you're going to read an article about that, and I'm interested to see your thoughts on that article. We also need to know, when we talk about the impact of trauma, that the healing process of the secondary victim is going to be dependent on the healing process of the primary victim. So for secondary survivors to heal, primary survivors must heal. And we'll see a little bit of that played out in the video that I'm going to have you watch. So what are some symptoms of secondary trauma? Well, symptoms are considered secondary because they occur in those who have not directly experienced the event, right? They weren't directly assaulted. They weren't directly in battle. They weren't directly affected by the natural disaster or whatever that it is, right? But they still have symptoms. In fact, the internalized symptoms may resemble traumatic stress disorder like symptoms, right? But probably be less intense. Won't be PTSD, but they might resemble some PTSD like characteristics and be less intense. Secondary traumatic stress involves individual symptoms, intrapersonal symptoms of the partners, children and professionals and others whom the primary survivor has a relationship with. So they are that stress, those symptoms really have to do with the relationship between the primary victim and the secondary victim. All of that leads to us as family science students, as those going into human development and family science, to remember the importance of self-care in our work. I talk about this a lot with you in your classes as well, the importance of processing and debriefing and not going through these chapters alone, knowing our triggers and being able to not just be aware, but respond to those in some way. So as a family professional, you will see trauma. It's going to happen. You're going to see it. You will spend your days helping family systems navigate their own trauma. It's part of what we do. And it will take a toll on you. It will take a toll on you. I've been doing this for a long time. All my years of working with teenagers and emerging adults, I have been witness to individual and family traumatic events that have taken their toll on me and taken their toll to the extent that at times I have to become uber aware of my own responses, my own capability to respond to that trauma, and I have to take care of myself. What I've realized is that as I internalize those things, I become less effective as a helper. And so when I'm able to debrief, when I'm able to process outside of my interactions with students, teenagers, I'm able to help them better. You have to be able to process and debrief the trauma that others are experiencing, that you are witnessing alongside them. You have to be able to do that. So, what do I want from you today for today's mod? Well, obviously watch this video, download the PowerPoint. I want you to read the article on secondary trauma in the undergraduate classroom. Interested to see your thoughts on that. There'll be a question on that in the journal entry for today. But the primary Journal 10 entry is going to have you watching a few clips from the show Private Practice, where character Charlotte was raped, sexually assaulted, and you're going to see primarily how her partner, Cooper, is dealing with that traumatic event and what that looks like for him. And so your response questions are going to be primarily in regard to that clip and how you might work with that couple. But there will be a question in there about the secondary trauma in an undergraduate classroom that I'm really interested to get your thoughts on as well. So that is all for this mod. I will see you back for Unit 3, Mod 11.